So I want to talk a little bit about what openness means in this new space. Because as I started writing the book, I would talk to people, well, tell me about how you're thinking about being open. And I found that people had all these different notions of what being open is. So you may think about it as open source, open platforms, especially from a technology point of view. But it's also, I think, much more around information sharing. How does information flow inside an organization, from inside the organization, outside, from outside and in? For example, how many of you practice open book management inside your organizations, where you share the finances of the organization with their employees? Show of hands? Okay, a couple people do. That's a 2-decade-old practice now. And the reason why I think many people don't feel comfortable with sharing more strategic information like that is because they're afraid of leaks. They're afraid of what would happen if that information got out. And so a question becomes, how do you explain and get people, inspire people towards this goal of financial excellence when they don't know what the financial state of the organization is? So the organizations that are practicing open book management, where they're explaining strategically what they're doing, have an advantage because everyone is starting to be more aligned with what they're trying to achieve. One of my favorite examples of this is a CEO of a hospital in Boston, of the Beth Israel Hospital, Paul Levy. And he's had a blog now for a couple of years. And he writes everything from talking about the Six Sigma initiatives, praising different departments. He talks about union negotiations. And he also takes pictures of old men playing chess in Boston Garden. And he just shares whatever it is that he wants to. What I find interesting there is that he, as a CEO, is developing a relationship with employees, with people, patients coming in, investors in the hospital, all the different stakeholders, because they hear from him on a regular basis. What he's done is actually created what I call a culture of sharing that didn't exist before. And that's what's different now than what was happening just 2 years ago, before we kind of came into this Facebook era. There was a culture of sharing now. People are getting comfortable with this idea that they share whatever catches their imagination. They share information they think is going to be helpful to the people they're trying to reach. So there's tons of different ways you can do information sharing, and there's also different ways now where you can spread decision making. If you go back into the literature of business and the history, people like Peter Drucker wrote more than 60 years ago about the need to flatten organizations to be able to push decision-making down to the front edges of the people who actually have the information to make the right decisions. And the reason why this hasn't happened is because it's very difficult to make sure that right decisions are being made. It's hard for the executives at that top level to feel comfortable giving up that need to be in control. What's different now is that the information sharing is there to support distributed decision-making. Now, distributed decision-making isn't always the best thing to do. You may actually want consensus, for example, when you're hiring a new member into a team, or you may want command and control and centralized decision-making because not everybody will have the full picture of a strategic direction. So lots of different ways you can make decisions, and the key question here becomes, how open do you need to be? Because this is the interesting thing. I don't think every organization should be completely 100% open, because it's impossible. Nobody is 100% open, not even to the closest people in your lives. So there's no way that a business could be also. So we go through an assessment. You can actually assess how open you are across each of these dimensions. So this is an exercise I did with one organization just around information sharing, where we looked at the 6 different dimensions of information sharing, had them rate themselves. It's a very quick and simple test. And then we asked them, in order to accomplish your goals, how open do you need to be? And one of their key strategic goals, not their social media goals, but strategic goals, was to improve the level of innovation that they have, and in particular, the sources of information, of innovation. So they realized that they wanted to do more crowdsourcing. They wanted to be able to put a problem out there and have multiple people internally and externally source the solution to those problems. But they realized that wasn't going to be enough. They also had to improve significantly their ability to explain their decision-making process of which solution they choose. Why did you choose that solution from an employee versus that other solution? Being able to explain why that was happening was something they realized they were not very good at. So having a map then of knowing how open they needed to be to accomplish their goals, knowing how open they already are today, really gave them this gap analysis. Gave them a roadmap to say, I need to make progress towards being this much more open in order to accomplish those goals.